How have the games been today? Have they been ass? Have they been good?
I've had some ass ones. I've had some good ones. It's a really mixed
Alright. At least it's not all ass.
thing, at least for me. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see because I'm unranked. So it's gonna be ass for a while.
Yeah, and
You're
I'm
welcome.
platinum.
Alright, we're on 117. No. We're on 116. Oh, this shit's funny. I love this. Alright, what happened?
Um, Baby mama drama. Hua Chong is in here.
And also, you knew
They're
died.
sneaking around. I know that. Also, you knew that.
Yeah. They're sneaking
Sneaky
around,
bird.
and Hua Cheng shows up in heaven through the Rainmaster. The Rainmaster comes up, and he disguises himself as one of the farmers. And he's talking about how
Yeah.
if Zhenwu lost the Rainmaster's support, it would all fall apart because farmers are the backbone of society, basically. And also,
Yes.
Hua Cheng assured Shilian that no one will find out that he's not at the array in the capital. Like, it's all completely covered. So he doesn't have to worry about that right now. So we don't know what's up with that. And then, yeah, so we're kind of still in the middle of this argument with Function and Jianlan, where she basically was having a breakdown talking about how she left him because she didn't want him to resent her. Um, and he was like, "But I promised you, you shouldn't have left." Blah blah blah, and all accept this fucked up little spirit as my son. So that chapter ends with, "What heavenly official would dare admit to such an affair or recognize such a hellish creature as their son? It would be an enormous stain on his reputation, and his worshippers and merits would be affected greatly." Oh, he's so cute. Chapter 116. The path shan't go astray, but the mandates are all the same. Feng Shin was only shocked into silence for a few moments before he had an answer, but Jianlan sneered before he could voice it. "Forget it. You don't need to say anything. You're someone else's prisoner right now. Even if you dared to claim your son, it would be nothing but an empty promise. I won't believe a word you say, so don't bother saying anything. Even if you're willing to take him as your son, I might not be willing to have you as his father." The fetus spirit was curled in her arms, wagging its tongue at Feng Shen, and snickering in a voice that sounded like a grown man's. Jianlan gave it a forceful slap on the behind to scold it. "Why are you pulling faces? I told you not to run off. You're driving me crazy." The fetus spirit's ugly little face scrunched up, and it finally behaved. The mother and child hurried out of the palace of Nanyang, while Feng Shen called out from behind, "Jianlan! Jianlan!" No response. In the end, he was again left alone within the palace of Nanyang. Feng Shen slumped back. Supporting his head with his hand, he glared for a long moment at the giant white radish that had been left behind, covered in rows of crooked bite marks. Then he lay flat on the ground. He wasn't even left with the energy to curse. Above the palace of Nanyang, Shilian sighed. "Guga, do you remember that night on Mount Yuzhun?" Hua Cheng suddenly asked. The fetus spirit appeared there as well. Shilian knew he was purposely changing the subject, but the business with the fetus spirit appearing at Mount Yuzhun was also highly suspicious, so he forced himself to focus on it. "I remember. While I was riding in the marriage sedan, it used a nursery rhyme to give me hints on how to find the ghost bride, Xuanji. It didn't let anyone else hear it. It was a song for me specifically. I wonder why." "It was probably acting on Jinwu's direction," Hua Cheng said. "Then the rhyme spelled out Jinwu's objective," Shilian said. "As for why it's become a fierce spirit under Jinwu's command, I'm afraid these are all questions for the state preceptor." "Then let's go ask him," Hua Cheng said. "I've got good news for Guga. The Wraith Butterflies have already found where the state preceptor is being held." Shilian's spirits lifted. Where? The palace of Ling Wen. The palace was no longer bustling inside and outside with countless civil guards rushing around with scrolls stacked high as mountains. Instead, it was now patrolled by the rigid, expressionless Divine Might Guard. Shilian and Hua Cheng dropped soundlessly onto the corner of one of the roofs. The state preceptor is locked up here? Is Ling Wen watching him? Shilian said. Correct, Hua Cheng replied. With the brocade immortal on her, Ling Wen is currently considered both a civil god and a martial god. After observing intently for a moment, Shilian commented, Then this is going to be tricky. Although the brocade immortal was no match for them, it still possessed a high level of cultivation, and had keener senses than the guards patrolling the grand avenue of the heavenly capital. If Shilian and Hua Cheng were reckless while infiltrating the palace of Ling Wen, the brocade immortal might detect them even if it couldn't defeat them, and once it had discovered them, Ling Wen would surely be alerted. Ling Wen and Junwu must be able to communicate with each other spiritually. If she discovers us, he will too, Shilian said. She's a civil god without the brocade immortal, and wouldn't be able to detect us. And the brocade immortal is a mere robe when it's not being worn, so it won't be able to alert Junwu either. We have to think of a way to separate them. We don't need to think of a specific plan. She'll have to take it off sooner or later, Hua Cheng said. No explanations required, Shilian understood. The brocade immortal was an evil object. Its evil chi was thick and heavy. Since Ling Wen hadn't been formally banished, she was still considered a heavenly official, and it would be bad for her health to continue to wear it. Wearing it also required her to maintain her male form, which drained her spiritual power. Not many people could handle that level of exhaustion, and so there had to be a time every day where she took it off to rest. They were whispering plans to each other when a black-clad man strolled out of the palace of Ling Wen with one hand tucked behind his back. After he gave some instructions to the soldiers on guard outside, he stepped into a side chamber, then exited the chamber a few moments later and entered the main hall anew. The man was Ling Wen, in male form, when he entered the side chamber, and in her true form upon exit. Her black outer robe had disappeared, and her steps weren't as light and energetic as they had been when she was in male form, a sign of skill in martial arts. She had in fact removed the robe. The brocade immortal was now in that side chamber. The two exchanged a look. Now they're separated, Hua Cheng said. Guga, you've got pretty good luck. Shilian puffed a breath and gave him a look. It's Sanlong's luck that's pretty good. Hua Cheng grinned. Main hall? Side chamber? After some thought, Shilian decided. Let's go with the side chamber. Who knows what the situation is like inside the palace of Ling Wen's main hall? If the state preceptor is being kept right next to Ling Wen, we won't be able to get around her. But maybe we can force a negotiation if we get our hands on the brocade immortal. Thus, the two waited for a short while, and took advantage of a changing of the guard to hop off the roof and sneak into the side chamber. The moment they leapt inside, Shilian wiped away his cold sweat. Sneaking into a lady official's private chambers wasn't something to be proud of, no matter the circumstances. However, his nervous expression faded a bit when he saw the state of the side chamber. Shilian's old rooms were more sumptuous than this, Function's more disorderly, and Mooching's more tasteful and exquisite. In any case, this didn't look like a lady official's private chamber at all, so Shilian didn't feel as stressed. The chamber was sparsely furnished, so it could hardly hide anything. It wasn't long before Shilian fumbled out a chest, but his face darkened the moment he opened it. It wasn't only because he'd gotten a face full of evil chi, but also because the chest was packed full of identical black robes. This again. It was the same as last time, when they had to try and find the real brocade immortal among hundreds of different articles of clothing. It had been a circus looking for the thing, practically a nightmare. This time there weren't as many sets, only around a dozen, but each robe was black and almost identical to the next. It was hard to tell which situation was more demoralizing. Was the brocade immortal even here? Feeling his head throb, Shilian asked miserably, Sanlong, what's Junwu doing right now? Do we have enough time? Hua Cheng had been closely monitoring the movement of everyone in the capital. At Shilian's question, he replied languidly, Guga, relax. We've got plenty of time. Junwu hasn't noticed you're gone. He's currently at the Palace of Divine Might, and has brought Mu Qing in to interrogate. By the looks of it, it'll be a while. Shilian was stunned by the news. Mu Qing? He's interrogating Mu Qing. Why? Wraith butterflies can't enter the Palace of Divine Might, so I can't hear clearly. But you know, Hua Cheng said, staring at Shilian. It must not be anything good. Shilian remembered how Jinwu had treated Yin Yu and anxiety gripped him. But worrying wouldn't help anything, so he said resolutely, Let's hurry then. Let me try on each of these robes, San Lang. Come give me orders. If the brocaded mortal didn't want to be discovered, or didn't want to take the life of whoever was wearing it, it could be worn casually. However, if someone made another person wear it, and gave them orders, that person had to obey. They would be able to expose the real thing using that method, but it was slightly dangerous. Let me do it, Hua Cheng said. Shilian shook his head. San Lang, you've worn the brocade immortal before, but it doesn't really work on you for some reason. Maybe it's ineffective against ghost kings? Only I can do this. He removed his white outer robe and dropped it on the ground by his feet. Hua Cheng raised an eyebrow and picked out a black robe to hand to him. Then I will take you up on your offer. Shilian swiftly put on the robe. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Ling Wen's black robes weren't at all sensual or revealing in the chest area. They were all very conservative and proper, so putting them on wasn't embarrassing. Shilian looked up. Okay, you can give me an order now. Hua Cheng's right hand held his left elbow, and his left hand propped up his chin. He looked at Shilian, seeming to think very seriously for a moment. And Gaga, my order is... Hua Cheng smiled happily. The anticipated command came mere moments later. Borrow spiritual power from me. Of course Shilian understood what he meant by borrow spiritual power, and his head almost started smoking. He quickly took off the robe. It's not this one. Ah, what a shame. It's not that one, Hua Cheng lamented. Shilian schooled his expression. San Lang, this isn't right. Be more serious, please. Don't give orders like those. Am I not being serious enough? Then what kind of orders do you mean? Hua Cheng asked with humility. Can Gaga be more specific? Shilian gave 2 soft coughs. Either way, you can't make me borrow spiritual power from you, he replied severely. Anything else is fine, like turn around in a circle, jump twice, or something like that, whatever you want. Hua Cheng cocked an eyebrow. Everything else is fine, is it? Very well, I understand. He handed Shilian another robe. Shilian swiftly put it on and looked up at Hua Cheng once more. Hua Cheng watched him for a moment. Gaga. A moment later he broke into a wide smile. Don't borrow spiritual power from me. He'd been careless. How could Hua Cheng do this? Shilian hastily began to strip. Okay, it's not this one either. Hua Cheng stopped him. Wait, Gaga, who says it's not this one? You haven't proven it yet. Don't borrow spiritual power from me had been Hua Cheng's order, and Shilian had to disobey it to prove the robe he was wearing right now wasn't the brocade immortal, which meant he had to do the opposite thing, borrow spiritual powers from Hua Cheng. They'd gone around in a circle and returned to the starting point. Shilian was shaken as he stared at Hua Cheng's serious expression. You're too sly. You can't do that. Hua Cheng hugged his arms. Why not? Gaga, didn't you say it yourself? Anything else is fine, just don't ask me to borrow spiritual power. Since you didn't like that command, I ordered you to do the complete opposite. How can you say I'm sly? Wasn't I staying true to your words? At a loss for what to say or how to dispute his logic, Shilian raised his finger to point at him for a moment. I can't win with you. Stop playing around. Without any further delay, he rushed over and gave Hua Cheng a peck on the lips. Even though Shilian knew there was no one around, he still looked around after he'd done the deed, as if afraid someone might be peeping. Hua Cheng's face didn't twitch in the slightest. Very good, he said calmly. It's clearly not this one either. We've verified as much. Shilian removed the second black robe. Don't give that order again either, all right? Hua Cheng passed a third one to him and smiled. Fine, as Gaga wishes. Shilian took the robe from him, woefully thinking, it feels like San Lang is getting harder and harder to deal with. Is it just my imagination? Although he was still worried Hua Cheng might give more prank orders, Hua Cheng did stop teasing him after those 2 jokes. But now it seemed strange that he was being so serious. Shilian tried on each of the dozen robes inside the chest, but he didn't obey any of Hua Cheng's orders. Could the real brocade immortal not be here? That was impossible. Ling Wen had to have taken it off. And besides, the entire chest was tainted with his evil qi. It had to be in there. Hua Cheng leaned against the door bar. Gaga, it seems the brocade immortal isn't just ineffective against me. It doesn't work on you either. What could the problem be? Shilian pulled out all of the black robes and started blindly picking at them in a random attempt to find the brocade immortal, but he found no success. He could only put his cast-off white cultivator robe back on and turned to Hua Cheng. This really isn't working. Looks like we'll have to take the entire chest with us. Hearing this, Hua Cheng let out a chuckle. Shilian was a little woeful, feeling rather ridiculous. It was so silly to drag dozens of robes around as blackmail material. But with things as they were, he didn't have any better ideas. Just as he was stuffing all the randomly strewn black robes back into the chest so they could carry the whole thing out, the doors to the side chamber opened unexpectedly. Ling Wen walked in, with hands clasped behind her back, looking exhausted. And then it goes ... She had probably finished resting and returned to put the brocade immortal back on, but she had run into two uninvited guests who had broken into her chamber, one looking incredibly innocent, the other looking nonchalant. With no comment on the situation before her, she immediately pressed two fingers against her temple. She was going to inform Junwu. However, Hua Cheng moved faster than she did. With one sweeping look, the two doors on the side chamber slammed shut. Ling Wen lowered her hand, her face dropping as well. Hua Cheng Zhu is quite impressive. Sanlong, you've created a ward? Shilian asked. A small one, Hua Cheng said. In only this side chamber. Junwu could establish a ward that spanned the heavenly capital, isolating everyone within from the outside world. And Hua Cheng could create a smaller ward within that one, a ward that sealed the spiritual powers of those within and prevented them from accessing spiritual communication. The side chamber had become a chest within a chest. Such wards would need to remain small, lest Junwu notice. It was his domain in the end. Shilian nodded. Ling Wen, I'm sure you can see that the brocade immortal is currently in our hands. If you don't want it to be burnt to ash by ghost fire, please don't make any reckless moves. Yet unexpectedly, Ling Wen only laughed. But Your Highness, Ling Wen said, the brocade immortal isn't actually in your hands. To be honest, Shilian had suspected as much. Nonetheless, he still voiced the most logical deduction. Ling Wen, you weren't wearing it when you left this room earlier. I don't think the brocade immortal is anywhere but here. Your Highness, have you perhaps misunderstood? Ling Wen replied. I only said that it's not inside the chest in your hands. I didn't say it wasn't inside this chamber. Her words made Shilian think of another possibility, and he cocked his head. Hua Cheng must have had the same thought, as they both moved their gazes to the white robe that Shilian was currently wearing. You guessed right, Ling Wen said. Your Highness is wearing it right now. When Shilian was trying on the black robes earlier, he had casually thrown aside the white robe he was wearing. All the robes had gotten lumped together, and when he was inspecting them afterwards. Somehow, the brocade immortal had secretly taken on the appearance of his white cultivator robes, and Shilian had picked it up and put it on. Shilian looked down at his clothes and wondered, then where's my original robe? With a casual motion of Hua Cheng's hand, the chest of robes toppled over on its own, and spilled its contents onto the floor. Buried deep beneath the dozens of black robes was one white cultivator robe, crushed at the very bottom. The real white robe Shilian had been wearing before. Let me drink. This must have been the work of a malicious spell cast by the brocade immortal. While he was trying on clothes at random, it seized the chance to drag Shilian's outer robe into the chest, then slipped out and transformed to look like that robe and replaced it. It then let itself be picked up and worn by Shilian. Shilian wasn't surprised in the least, but he was rather baffled. Isn't that a little too cunning? It was only an article of clothing, after all. Besides, wasn't the brocade immortal itself supposed to be not very clever? Assumedly, Ling Wen had taught it this trick. Sure enough, Ling Wen said, I gave it the idea, though I didn't actually think it'd see use. But that means I was technically the one who made your highness wear the brocade immortal. If Hua Cheng had handed the robe to Shilian and put it on, then Hua Cheng would be considered the one in control. However, the brocade immortal had used Ling Wen's idea to trick Shilian into wearing it, and so the one in control now was Ling Wen. That meant Shilian would obey Ling Wen's word and heed her every order. Ling Wen, Shilian tried. Has it ever occurred to you that the brocade immortal might not work on me? Ling Wen smiled. I won't know until I've tried. Your Highness, from now on you cannot attack me. If you hear me, nod your head. Although he didn't intend to do so, as soon as he heard the order, Shilian involuntarily nodded before he even knew what was happening. Why was it working now? It clearly didn't work earlier when Hua Cheng was the one giving orders. Was it only ineffective when the one in control was Hua Cheng? If that was true, then the tables had suddenly turned. Shilian didn't move, nor did Hua Cheng. They exchanged looks, both remaining calm and steady. Ling Wen was calm and steady as well. Now then, will Hua Chengzhu please remove the ward from this side chamber? Don't do it, San Lang, Shilian said urgently. Are you sure, Your Highness? Ling Wen said. I can order you to do anything. Hua Cheng remained unflustered. It's fine if I can't touch Ling Wen, Shilian thought. No one else is under such restrictions. We'll be in the clear as long as San Lang catches her by surprise and stops her from giving any orders. However, Ling Wen was sharp and guessed their plans. Hua Chengzhu, I suggest you don't waste your time thinking of ways to catch me by surprise and subdue me. Your Highness, listen well. You will attack Hua Chengzhu if he attempts to inflict any sort of harm on me. With that, she blocked any plans they could have possibly used before they could even try. Now, Hua Chengzhu, time to remove the ward, Ling Wen said. I still have work to do. The palace of Ling Wen has an enormous backlog of reports I need to manage that haven't been gone through yet. Can we solve this little problem quickly? Hua Cheng only smirked. The next moment, Ling Wen's eyes widened. She seemed as if she wanted to speak, but no voice came out. If someone were standing behind her, they would discover that a wraith butterfly with fluttering silver wings had perched on the back of her neck. It was this tiny little creature that had stopped her body from moving and prevented her from making a sound. Hua Cheng hugged his arms and flashed his incredibly fake and insincere smile before saying lazily, Did you really think I'd need to catch someone by surprise to subdue them? Ling Wen couldn't speak, but the words she wanted to say were clearly written on her expression. Hua Chengzhu, have you forgotten? I've already given His Highness an order. The next moment, the brocade immortal activated its powers. Shilian abruptly turned around and lunged at Hua Cheng, hand raised to strike. Some time passed before Shilian's vision cleared, and he came to his senses with a start. San Lang! Hua Cheng was standing before him. At the center of his chest, there was a crushed hand upon his red robe. It was Shilian's own, crushing hand on his red robe. Hua Cheng didn't dodge the blow at all. He had stood there and allowed Shilian to deliver a full-force strike to his heart. Shilian hadn't yet reacted, when Hua Cheng firmly gripped his wrist. There, he said in a low voice. The attack is complete, and the command is released. Sure enough, once Shilian's attack landed, he felt his body slacken and his freedom return. For the sake of releasing Shilian from the command Ling Wen had given, Hua Cheng had really just stood there and taken the blow without even trying to dodge. Once released, Shilian quickly withdrew his hand, his face dropping. It was a moment before he asked, San Lang, are you hurt? He examined Hua Cheng's face closely. He couldn't see any physical changes, but Hua Cheng wasn't a living human, and his skin was already a snowy pale shade, as if he'd gone years without seeing sunlight. However, judging by his tone, it didn't sound like he was affected at all. Gaga is indeed incredible. What a beautiful blow, he commented with a smile. But Shilian continued to look upset, almost as though Hua Cheng had scared him. I wasn't joking around, he said sternly. I used almost 3/4 of my full strength in that attack. Are you really all right? When Ling Wen gave her order, the word she had used was attack. Typically, Shilian never used attacking as his intent when he exchanged blows with others. His moves were usually pure self-defense, or to restrain a target. He wasn't sure what would happen if he unleashed a strike with attack as the driving force. I wasn't joking. Gaga really is incredible, Hua Cheng replied slowly. Perhaps not even Jun Wu would be your match if you weren't wearing those things. Shilian unthinkingly touched his neck, but he immediately dropped his hand when he felt the cursed shackle. Hua Cheng added, Gega, I have a question for you. What is it? You had a chance to remove those cursed shackles that bind you. Why did you keep them? Shilian hadn't expected him to ask that. Maybe it was to remind myself of some things. He then said quickly, Sunlong, don't change the subject. What kind of bad habits have you developed? That situation just now. You could have just restrained me. Why did you stand there and take the blow? So you do know that it's a bad habit, Gege, Hua Cheng replied. You have no right to lecture me when it comes to taking beatings, you know. Oh, really? Shilian said, but he felt guilty the moment the words left his mouth. After all, he'd almost swallowed a sword back then, back when he fought the fetus spirit in the water, and Hua Cheng had caught him red-handed. Yes, really. Why use other methods if I can solve the problem by taking a beating? That was your bad influence on me, Hua Cheng replied. Shilian waved him off. Never mind, Sunlong. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's look at these robes. He tugged at the white robe's hem, feeling deeply frustrated. This was just great. They had definitely found the brocade immortal, but now they had to think of a way to take it off. That's the end.
Having that conversation in front of Lingwen is so funny.
They're so silly. Lingwen's just frozen and can't move.
Relax.
Guys, relax.
She's like, why the fuck would this happen?
It's so sad because Lingwen was the only one who was like nice to Shilian when he ascended a third time. It makes me sad. They're buddies.
Yeah.
All right.
Why does she go into like a male form?
Because it's her more powerful form, because more people worship her as a male. Because her backstory is all about like feminism and how she is like looked down upon because she's a woman, and how she like couldn't ever be like the top civil official because she's a woman, and so people ended up just like turning her, when she ascended, people ended up turning her into a male because they're like, it couldn't be a woman.
They gender bend her.
Yeah, they gender bend her. Yeah.
It's awful.
It is. Yeah, there's like a line about how people like would leave like soaked tampons on her altar or some shit, remember? It's old, I'll have to find it. There's like some crazy shit like that. Her whole backstory is that she's just disrespected as a woman.
I do know that. I do remember that. Just a whole tampon, but
I think that's why she joins Junwoo, because Junwoo's like, I'll be a feminist.
He's like, feminism, am I right?
And he's like, she's so capable, and was like hyping her up. So I think it was like Yin Yu, like he was like manipulating her.
Yeah.
It's sad.
God.